Well, good day, and it's an exciting time again. Why? Because it's time for mathematical literacy, that's right. And today we're discussing a phenomenally exciting topic, money, finances. Man, I enjoy money, okay? My wife also loves money, but she just loves spending it. So I've got to earn it so she can spend it. So today, we're going to discuss the fact that there has to be some sort of balance between the earning and the spending. That's a very critical lesson to learn in life. One that I hope my wife is going to learn about shortly, okay? And I hope she's watching this program as well. So what are we discussing? Well, it's all about personal and household finance. Now, I want to stop for a minute and say this, that in the new CAPS documents, in grade 10, we look at personal finances. Okay, so we look at you as an individual, and we study all money-related matters for an individual, like me. When you become a little bit bigger and a little bit older and you get to grade 11, we're going to start looking at finances that relate to owning a business or running a business. But for now, we're just focusing on me as a person, or you as a person. Personal finance. Okay, so hence our topic then is quite clearly saying, you know what, we're dealing with personal and household finance. And what are we going to study today? Well, there are a few things we're going to look at. We're going to look at some financial documents, and we're going to look at a bank account statement, what it looks like, what it means, what it involves, what it all means, how we interpret that bank accounts. Okay, and then we're going to go on and we're going to look at shop account statements. Very, very important if you enjoy shopping. Then we're going to look at this funny thing called receipts. After that, we're going to take a short ad break. And then we're going to come back and we're going to look at income and expenditure. And we're going to look at a budget. What is a budget? How do I create a budget? Okay, how does it work? And remember, we're talking about personal budgets. So I'm not talking about a budget of a business, but personal. Why? Because I'm in grade 10 and that business stuff is for grade 11. Finally then, we're going to end off the session by looking at some value-added tax, or as we know it as VAT. Okay? What does VAT mean? What does it entail? How do we calculate VAT? All that sort of thing. So that is the program for today. I hope you're going to enjoy it. And on that, let's get started. Okay, so financial documents, what we're looking at, and let's have a look at a bank account statement. Now, there's certain things about a bank account that we need to be aware of, okay? So the first thing you need to understand is that when you get a bank account, there's a date on the account. Now, what's that date mean? That date means that's the date that this account was printed and the date that it was now sent out to you. Got that? There's another thing also to do with dates called time interval. Now, what's time interval? Well, when you get a bank statement, you don't just get one line, okay, like deposit 300 Rand. There's a whole lot of information. We'll look at it just now. Things like you withdrew money. You put some money into the account. Somebody else put money in your account, okay? You then went to the shop and you spent some money. And all those transactions are shown on your bank statement. And the time period or the time interval is basically the time that that bank statement starts to the last transaction. So from the first to the last transaction. That's called a time interval. So let's just recap that then. The date on your bank statement says this is the date that we've printed the statement and we've posted it off to you. A time interval is saying this bank statement is for this period, from the 1st of January to the 31st of January, or even maybe from the 10th of January to the 10th of February. Got it? on your bank statement, there must be a name. And that's important, right? Why is that important? Well, imagine if I get a bank statement and I look at my final balance and it says, I have a balance of 1,300,000. I'm going to be jumping for joy until I look at the name and realize they've sent me the wrong statement. And it belongs to a Mr. Pochenpoel or something, okay? And not to a Mr. Templeton. Because a Mr. Templeton's bank account will probably have a little minus in front of it. No, 1,300,000. So when I get my bank statement, before I look at that final bank balance and jump for joy and open up a bottle of Coke, if you're older, a bottle of champagne, because you've got all this wonderful money, have a look at the name first. It might not belong to you. Okay. Account number. So they are confirming that this bank statement belongs to you. Not only is there a name, but hey, there's also a bank account number. Because there might be another Mr. Templeton in the world. And he might be getting my bank statement and I might be getting his. So I want to make sure it's mine. So not only is there my name, but it's my personalized bank account number. Okay. At the top of every bank statement, there's something called a balance brought forward. Now, that's the money that would have been in your account at the beginning of my time interval. So at the end of last month, I had R1.20 in my bank account. Next month, I get my next bank statement and it says balance brought forward R1.20. So I know that that R1.20 is the leftover amount from last month. Got it? On my bank statements as well, if we look here, there are other things. There are things called deposits. Now, what is a deposit? A deposit is money that's been put into your account. Now, as a teacher working, the school I work for is going to put money into my account every month. Okay? And that's called a deposit. Maybe at home, you have your own bank account. Okay? You personally, as a teenager. And a deposit would be some money that maybe Granny's put in your account for your birthday. Happy birthday, little Johnny. There's 100 Rand in your bank account. You go off to the bank, you get a statement and says deposit 100 Rand. So deposit, money going into the account. Now, as a husband, that's my job. Well, that's what it is in my household anyway. My wife's job, though, is to make sure that on my bank statement, the word withdrawal appears several times. Okay? So a deposit is putting money in. This thing here, withdrawals, is money going out of my bank account. Now, those withdrawals can happen in several ways. For example, I could go off to an ATM and push 5 little buttons and voila, out comes a whack of money. Well, that's how my wife thinks it works anyway. She believes you just got to remember the 5 numbers and you get rewarded with money. Okay? So a withdrawal, I push in a few numbers called my PIN code and money comes out. I can also make a withdrawal from my account by going off to a shop and paying directly with my card. So let's say I go off and I buy a whole lot of purchases and, let's give a good example. I go off to buy a pair of shoes, okay? And they say, sir, your shoes are going to cost you R5.99, okay? I'm not an expensive guy. I go for cheap stuff. R5.99, I hand over my card, they zip zap it, I push in a pin on their little machine there, and voila, on my bank statement, there's a little thing that says, you've purchased from ABC Shoe Store, R5.99. And that's like kind of a withdrawal. Why? Because money's coming out of your account. In the same way, my wife goes and buys a pair of shoes. Okay? And the clerk says that'll cost you 8,900 Rand for those pair of shoes. She gives them over my card, they swipe it, and voila, on my bank statement it says ABC Shoes, 8,999 Rand. Okay? You got the idea? So withdrawal is like taking money out of the account. whether I take it at cash or whether I go ahead and purchase in a store and the money's still coming out of that account. Right. Then we have this funny little thing here called bank charges. What is bank charges? Now, banks are like a little business, aren't they? They've got to make money. Why? Well, they've got to pay all their people who work in the bank, and to do that, they've got to have some sort of income. So what they do is they say, "Oi, because you belong to our bank, we're going to charge you. There's a fee. In fact, we're going to break that fee down. And what we're going to say to you is this. Every time you put money into our account, someone's got to do a lot of work. Okay? They've got to take the money from you. They've got to fill in forms. They've got to do 1 or 2, 3 stamps. They've got to get it on the computer, make sure the money's in there or is reflected in your account. And that's kind of work. And for that, we're going to charge you some money. Now, different banks charge different amounts of money. So before you open up a bank, go and see what they're charging you. In the same way, if I withdraw money, so if I go off to an ATM and I take money out the account, the bank's going to charge you for that. Okay? So all these little bits of money that the bank charges you is called bank charges. Well, that makes sense, doesn't it? Bank charges you, so it's called bank charges. Right, now, then this word here, interest. Now, interest can be a good thing or it can be a bad thing. Why could it be good or why could it be bad? Well, first of all, it can be a wonderful thing if you got a lot of money in your account. Because if you got money in your account, the bank are going to say, "Jeez, we want you to keep your money in our account." And to entice you, okay, to want to get you to keep your money in our bank, we're going to give you a little reward. And what we're going to say is this. For every bit of money you put in our bank, we're going to give you 3% interest. So if you put 100 Rand in our bank account, at the end of the year, we'll give you an extra 3 Rand. Guys, that doesn't sound like a lot of money at all, does it? In fact, my goodness, maybe I should take my 100 Rand out. But if you got a lot of money in your bank account, they're going to give you a lot of interest. The more money, the more interest. Happy? When is it a bad thing? Okay. Well, it's going to be a bad thing if you owe them money. So let's say I go off to the bank and I take out money 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 and I take out money. At the end of the month, I might have a bank balance of minus 5,000 Rand, which basically means I've taken out 5,000 Rand more than I should have. And if that's the case, the bank are going to say, "Oh, you know what? You're taking our money, so we're going to charge you." So then the bank charge you interest. Now, here's a little thing you got to learn in life, okay? Learn it now while you're in grade 10. If you put money in the bank and they give you interest, the interest will always be less than the interest they're going to charge you. So if they say you put money in our account, we'll give you 3% interest. But if you take too much money out, we're going to charge you 5% interest, okay? So always remember that. The banks are out there to get you. Right. I don't know. Am I allowed to say that? Anyway. Now, final balance. What's final balance mean? The final balance means that's the amount of money that's left in your account after the entire month has gone off. Okay? So once you've done all your monthly spending, you are now left with a certain amount of money. And the final balance tells you how much money is left over. Have you got that? So that's quite a bit of information, eh? There's a lot of stuff in one little bank account. But it's important to know what's happening in your bank account. Make sure that it's correct. Okay? Make sure no one's going into your bank account and taking money out of it. Okay? It's okay if someone's going in and putting money in. We won't query that. But if someone's taking money out, you've got to watch it. So that whole bank account is there to show you what's happening with your money. Okay, let's move on. Now, let's have a look at an example here. We're going to look at a question. Portia opened a bank account when she started a part-time job as a shop assistant. She can withdraw money from an ATM 4 times a month without paying any charges. She can also swipe her card when paying for goodies at the till. Examine her mini statement below and answer the questions that follow. Okay, so here is her little mini statement. Right, now, let's have a look at that. First of all, we see the name of the bank. There it is over here. It's called my New Bank South Africa. We've got an account number. Here it is, 902763882125. What this doesn't have, though, folk, is a name. Now, remember I told you you had to have a name on a bank statement. Now, what I'm showing you here is not a full bank statement. It's just a little mini statement that you're getting from the ATM. So you know this is yours. Why? Because when you put your card into the ATM, you had to push a special PIN number. Okay? So they know that the person getting this statement is the person who belongs to the card, is the person who belongs to the account. So for a mini statement that you draw out at an ATM, you don't have to have your name on it. In fact, it won't give you your name on it. But for a bank statement that comes in the post, it's going to have your name on it. Let's move on. The date. Now remember we said this. What's this mean? This means that's the date you're getting the statement. And do you remember this other thing we discussed here called a time interval? Now, what is the time interval for this statement? Well, it starts on the 30th of the 1st and it ends on the 7th of February. So the actual period we're looking at is from the 30th of January all the way through to the 7th of February. Do you understand the difference? The time interval and the actual date. Now, let's have a look at some of these words we spoke about. Here's something called the balance. Now, the balance says the balance at this date is 1,230 Rand, or we can also say it's the balance brought forward. Okay, the balance BF, brought forward. There's another balance here at the end, and that will be the balance at the end of the month. So there are 2 balances, one beginning of the month and one right at the end of the month. Deposit. That's a lovely word, deposit. Here is interest. Then there's something called bank charges. Cash. So she withdrew some cash, a cash withdrawal. She went off to a place called Movie Palace and spent some money. Then she made another cash withdrawal. There it is. All right. Now, let's read the questions. Okay. Can I just stop here for a minute and interrupt myself? And I always like interrupting myself because if I don't do it, my wife does it. So let me do it myself. When you get a question in a test or in an exam, before you even read the questions, look at the document that's given to you and just get a feel for it. Look at it. Say, right, overall, there's this date. I can see my time period. Oh, there's a balance here and a balance there. There's some withdrawals. There's some deposits. Okay? So you're getting an overview of that document that's in front of you before you even look at the questions. Now, I've done that. Now we're going to look at these questions. What's the first question? Calculate how much money Portia has in her account at the end of January 2012. Okay? So we want to know how much money until this time here. It's the 31st of January. That's what we want to know. We're not interested in February yet. Why? Because the question says end of January. So that's what we're going to look at. So how much money do I have in my account? Well, first of all, I've got 1,230 Rand here, which was there from last month. So in my calculator, I'm going to say this. I have 1,500 Rand. Okay? Now, what else do I have? I've put in 1,500 Rand. There's 1,000, sorry, hold on, my balance is 1230. Let's just correct that quickly, hey? Otherwise, we're going to be in big trouble. 1230. Oops. Right, now, my deposit is 1,500 Rand. In other words, someone's come along and put 1,500 Rand in my account. Either my boss or a very, very, very nice granny, okay? But I've got 1,500 Rand. So it's been put into my account, so obviously my balance is going to get bigger. So let's have a look at that, okay? So plus 1,500 Rand equals. So far I have 2,730 Rand in my account. But let's have a look here. There's interest. I'm getting interest on my money. I'm getting 2.83 Rand interest. How do I know I'm getting that interest and they're not going to charge me? Well, I know I'm getting that interest because I have a positive balance. I had money of 1,230 Rand in my account. I got another 1,500 Rand in my account. I've got money, and because I've got money in the account, the bank better pay me and say thank you for it. And that's what they're doing. And in return for having that money, they're giving me, oops, see, here we go, everything's gone wrong. They're giving me 2.83 Rand. Okay? So I'm going to add 2.83 Rand. What's my final answer? There it is. I've got 2,732 Rand and 83 cents in my account. You understand that? Okay. So far it's easy, isn't it? Let's move on. My next question says this. How much did Portia spend in the first week of February? So let's have a look. First week of February, how many days is that? Well, we know 1 week has 7 days. So it's the 1st, the 2nd, the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, and the 7th. Okay? If we look at our statement, you can see that the statement is until the 7th. In other words, it's all this amount of money over here. Okay, let's just get this, sorry. Everything I spend from the 1st through to the 7th. So how much am I spending? Okay, well, I took 400 Rand cash out of my bank. I went to Movie Palace. I spent 65 Rand. I took another 250 Rand out of my account. So I either went off to the ATM or I went off to the bank and went to the bank teller and said, "Hey, I want 250 Rand, please. I filled in the right forms. Give me the cash." Okay? Let's have a look at this funny thing over here called bank charges. Now, is that what Portia spent? You know what? She didn't spend that, hey? The bank just took it away. She never spent 5.50 Rand. The bank took it out of her account. So there's a very thin line with this kind of question. Okay? How much did Portia spend? Well, she only spent the 400, the 65 Rand, and the 250 Rand. That is what she spent. I'm going to take it out a different color here. She just spent 400 Rand, 65 Rand, and 250 Rand. She never spent that 5.50 Rand. So let's do that. Out comes our calculator, and we're going to say, right, first thing, she spent 400 Rand plus what else? 65 Rand plus what else? 250 Rand. She spent a total of 715 Rand. Okay? If the question asked, what were her expenses for the first week? Okay? Then, and only then, would we include the bank charges. But this question said, what did she spend? And she didn't go off and spend 5.50 Rand at the bank. The bank took the money. Are we clear on that? Let's move on. Next question. What is the balance in Portia's account after her withdrawal on the 7th of February? Okay, now, I'm going to make life a little bit easy. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to underline everything that goes into her account. In other words, all the money that's in her account or all the deposits, I'm going to underline that in green. all the money that's been charged to her or that's coming out of her account, I'm going to underline in pink. And then we're going to add up all the greens and subtract all the pinks. Easy? Let's have a look. So the first thing then is let's find some green. Now, balance, that is in her account. We're putting 1,500 Rand in her account. She's getting 2.83 Rand in her account. Remember, we discussed why. Bank charges, that is money that's coming out of her account. 400 Rand cash she took out of her account. She went to Movie Palace and spent 65 Rand. She took a further 250 Rand out of her account. So now, let's get our calculator, add up all the stuff that's in, take away all the stuff that came out, so we can find out her final balance. Okay, so I'm going to show you step by step, and let's go. First thing then, we said she had a bank balance of 1,230 Rand. We added 1,500 Rand. Do you remember that? Plus her interest of 2.83 Rand, 2.83. Now we're going to take all those horrible expenses and take them away. So minus, let's go. First thing, 5.50 Rand for bank charges. Then she took out 400 Rand for cash. She withdrew 400 Rand. Then what did she do? She went to Movie Palace and spent 65 Rand. So we're taking away 65 Rand. And finally, she took out some more cash of 250 Rand. Minus 250 Rand equals her bank balance is 2,012 Rand and 33 cents. Happy? She should be happy. Why? She has a positive bank account. A wonderful, wonderful feeling when you look at your bank statement and you can see you have a positive bank account. My dear wife hasn't experienced that feeling yet, but hopefully after this program she will. So Portia has 2,012 Rand 33. And that's the balance that we would write in over here. Happy? Let's go on. Now, the next thing we're going to have a look at is a shop account statement. So we've looked at a bank statement. Now, we're going off to a shop and we're going to spend some money. And there are certain things we've got to look at. So let's have a look at it. First of all, when we get an account from the shop, there are going to be certain things on that account statement. There's going to be the date, just like our bank account. There's also going to be a time interval, again, just like our bank account. So it's going to say this account is dated the 10th of February. The time interval is everything that you did on your account from the 1st of January to the 31st of January. So you went in and you bought yourself, let's pretend we're going off to ABC shoes, okay? You went in and you bought yourself a pair of men's shoes at 5.99 Rand. You then went the next day and you bought yourself a woman's pair of shoes. Well, I wouldn't have bought it. My wife would have bought it for 8,999 Rand. You then went off and bought your kid a pair of shoes and his were about 6,000 Rand. You felt sorry for your husband and bought him another pair of shoes, this time for 6.99 Rand. Now, if all that happened in the month of January, all those transactions are going to show on your shop account. If you've made a payment, it's also going to be reflected on that account. Okay? So, our account will have the date, the time interval. It's going to tell you your name. It's going to say, oi, this account belongs to Mr. Peter Templeton. It's going to have my account number, just in case there's another Mr. Peter Templeton in this world, and he gets my account and I get his. Right? And if my wife's been shopping for shoes, hopefully he will get my account. Then, it's going to have all the charges. In other words, everything I have spent in that month. It's also going to show me the payments, how much money I've paid towards settling that account. And remember, when I open up an account at a shop, I might buy to the value of, let's say, 300 or 400 Rand. It doesn't mean I've got to pay that 300 or 400 Rand off at the end of the month. The shop might say, you know what, we're nice. You can pay it off 6 months. So instead of paying 300 Rand this month, because you spend 300 Rand, you only need to pay 50 Rand. And you say, wow, what a lovely shop. And they say, of course we're lovely, but we're going to charge you for it. And that brings us to the next thing, this thing called interest. So the shop's also charging you interest. It seems we live in a very, very wicked world where the bank charges us interest. Now shops also charging us interest. Get used to it, folk. It's going to happen for the rest of your life. Right. And finally, some shops charge you insurance. Now, why would they charge you insurance? Well, this is the reason. Let's say I go off and I buy a lovely television set for myself. And I'm going to have to pay 3,000 Rand for my TV set. Okay? If I don't pay every month, so I'm paying 3,000 Rand, I'm going to pay it off 6 months, I've got to pay 500 Rand a month. Okay? If I don't pay my 500 Rand, the shop's going to come along and knock up my door and say, hey, we want our TV back, please. Okay? And you lose your TV. But let's say I'm watching TV one night and my whole TV just blows up in front of me. Okay? I decide I'm not going to pay. The shop comes along. Hey, we want the TV. And you say, yeah, sure, take it. Right? The shop's going to lose money. First of all, you're not paying, and now they've got a TV that doesn't work. So some shops say, if you want to buy our stuff, you can, but we're going to charge you, or we're going to take an insurance out on that until it's paid off. And you are going to pay for the insurance. This world is becoming worse and worse and worse. Now we've been charged interest, now also insurance. Okay? But the shops are there, they've got to protect themselves, and if you're not paying cash for something, they've got to insure their goods. Because remember, it's their goods until it's paid off. So they have to insure it. But you're going to pay for the insurance. Got that? Now, let's move on. Let's have a look at another example. Over here, I was saying this. I have a calendar month from the year 2007. I've also got a list of calls and SMSs made in a specific week. And I'm also going to show you the cost of calls and SMSs. So let's have a look at all that. First of all, here is a calendar month from the year 2007. Let's just have a look at this. How many days are shown on this calendar month? There are 28. Now that could be a kind of giveaway. Okay? What month are we talking about there? Well, what month has 28 days? The only month I know of that has 28 days is the month of February. So just by looking at this, now notice I haven't even determined what the question is. I'm just looking at the information I'm given. And just by looking at this, I've noticed there are 28 days on this calendar month they've given me, which means this must be the month of February. So I'm going to write that. This is Feb. Why? The 28 days. Now, looking further on, there are a whole lot of calls that are made and SMSs. So this is like a bill I'm getting from my cell phone provider, whichever one it is. Okay? And they've given me an account. And this is the breakdown of the account. Now, the time interval is from the 8th of that month all the way through to the 14th. And you can see on the 8th, at 9:43 a.m., I sent an SMS. On the 9th of that month, at 2:54 p.m., I made a call and I spoke for 5 minutes and 48 seconds. On the same day, at 8:34 p.m., I made another call and spoke for 4 minutes, 12 seconds. On the 10th, I made a call and sent an SMS. On the 11th, I sent an SMS and made a call. On the 12th, a call. On the 14th, an SMS. Now, the cost of the calls. We have something called peak calls and off-peak calls. Now, peak calls are calls that are made between certain times of the day. And the feeling is that those peak times are when a lot of people are phoning. Okay? So there's businesses that are open and they're all making calls to their clients. Clients are phoning businesses. People are phoning each other. There's just a whack of people phoning. Off-peak time is the time when not so many people are making calls. In other words, late at night. Businesses don't work late at night, well, most of them don't, so they're not going to be making calls. When you get home, all right, or let me rephrase that, when your folks get home, they don't suddenly start phoning every single business that they owe money to, or they don't start making business calls, or they don't start phoning this person and that person. The only people you really phone are probably family and friends. You as a teenager, of course, will be phoning continuously. But off-peak time is going to be a lot cheaper than peak time. Why? Because all our cell phone companies want you to phone when it's not so busy, when the airtime is not so busy, okay? So they're encouraging you to do so by making it cheaper. So they're saying to you, if you phone before 8 o'clock, you're going to pay a lot of money. If you phone after 8 o'clock, you're not going to pay so much money. So rather pay a phone after 8 o'clock. Let's have a look. So, peak calls on Monday to Friday from 7 in the morning to 8 at night, R2.40. Off-peak calls on Monday to Thursday from 8 o'clock at night to 7 o'clock the next morning. And from 8 o'clock on Friday all the way through to Monday, 7 o'clock. Got that? And Monday to Friday, peak SMSs, sorry, there should be a line drawn here, oh dear. Peak SMSs on Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Off-peak SMSs are basically the same as off-peak calls. So in other words, if I make a call between 7 in the morning and 8 at night, that's peak time. If I make a call from 8 o'clock at night all the way through the night to 7 o'clock the next morning, that's called off-peak time. And on weekends, it's from 8 o'clock on a Friday night, the whole of Friday night, the whole of Saturday, the whole of Sunday, all the way to Monday morning, 7 o'clock, off-peak. Now, let's look at the tariffs here. They're saying peak calls are R2.40 a minute, but off-peak calls are only R1.20 a minute. Okay? Peak SMSs are 90 cents, and off-peak SMSs are 35 cents. Do you see how off-peak time, they're trying to entice you to make those calls during those off-peak times because they're much cheaper. Right, now that we've looked at everything, let us now look at the question. First question, what month is shown? Explain your answer. Now remember, we just did that. We looked at that and we said this must be February. Why is it February? Because there are 28 days in the calendar month. Next question. You see how we answered that question before we even read it? Because we were looking at an overview of all the information given to me. Now, the next thing. Calculate the total cost of the calls and SMSs made during the specific week as shown in the list above. Yeah! Guys, this is not a problem. This is like a career. There is so much work we're going to have to do now. And I know it's a lot of work because let's look at 13 marks. Okay? I always say to my boys, and I'm going to say it to you today, and I'm going to say it to you throughout the series. Folk, there's no such thing as a question unless it has a mark allocation. Right? Because that mark allocation is going to tell you how much work is involved with this whole question. Got that? So the first question was out of 2 marks. What month is shown? Explain your answer. Simple. It's the month of February, number 1. And number 2, it is because there are 28 days. Straightforward, simple. 2 marks. Done. Got it. Now this thing is 13 marks. That tells me I am going to do so much work. Well, let's have a look at it. Okay. I'm going to go back to this first page, and we're going to look here. Now, first thing. Let's change our color. Let's start working in green. I make an SMS at 9:43 a.m. on the 8th of the month. The first thing I have to determine is the 8th of the month. Is it a weekend or is it not a weekend? And the time they give me, is it peak time or is it off-peak time? So, the 8th of the month. The 8th of the month is a Thursday. Okay, so it could be peak or it could be off peak, depending on the time. Now, 9:43 in the morning, 9:43 on a Thursday morning, okay, between 7 and 8 o'clock, 9:43 is between that time, is peak. And I'm paying R2.40 per minute. So I'm going to start off and saying, in fact, hold on, that's an SMS, eh? But the time is still the same. So I'm going to say this is peak. I'm going to put a P there. The next call I make is on the 9th. And on the 9th is a Friday. And it's at 2:45, which means it's during the day. That too is peak time. The next one, 8:34 p.m. It's also on the 9th, which is a Friday. But have a look here. It's after 8 o'clock at night. And we said if it's after 8 o'clock at night, it's off peak. So I'm going to put a little O here for meaning off peak. Next thing, let's go for it. 10:26 on the 10th. The 10th is a Saturday. And I don't even have to look at the time. Because it's a Saturday, I know it's off peak. Because if it's a Saturday, I know it's off peak. The 11th is a Sunday. Because it's a Sunday, I know it's off peak. Because it's a Sunday, it's off peak. The 12th, what's the 12th? The 12th is a, let's have a look here, Monday. Let's have a look at the time now. It's before 8 o'clock at night. That's peak time. 2:35 p.m. on the 14th. What's the 14th? The 14th is a Wednesday. Wednesday at 2:35 is peak time. Right. Sure, I feel exhausted already and we haven't even got halfway through this question. But the first thing I had to do was look at, is it peak or is it off peak? Now, why are we doing this question? We're doing this question because we're now forcing you to look at different things in the account. Okay? So we are forcing you, first of all, look at the calendar month. Now, let's look at this little mini statement that you got. And it's telling you when you've made all these calls and what time you've made them. So by giving you this question, we are forcing you now to interpret this little mini statement. Got it? Okay. But what the statement lacks, of course, is the actual costs. And we're making you sort that out. Now, we've worked out peak and off peak. Now we've got to work out the costs. The easiest, I think, is to work out the cost of the SMSs. So let's start that first, shall we? So, peak SMS. How much is a peak SMS? It's 90 cents. Okay? So I'm going to say here, I have got, and I'm going to write it 0.90. That is a 9. Another SMS. Off-peak SMS is charging us 35 cents. So off-peak SMS, 35 cents. 0.35. That's a naught. Let's do it properly. Okay. Another SMS off peak, 35 cents. Another SMS off peak, 35 cents. Another SMS, but this one's during peak time, so we know it's 90 cents. Where are we getting these figures from? From this table over here. The 35 cents, the 90 cents. Sure. Right, next thing now. We are going to work out the cost of the actual calls. Now, in life, there are always funny little tricks. Always. And normally if you see a little asterisk or a little star, if you see a star next to something, you look at the bottom of the page because you'll see another star with a little sentence that explains what that star means. And we've got the exact thing here. Let's look at this. It says it's R2.40 per minute with a star. Now, let's look and see what the star means. This star means that calls are charged per second. So, although I'm paying R2.40 a minute, I'm going to pay R2.40 if I speak for that whole minute. But what happens if I don't speak for a whole minute? Well, I'm going to be charged part of that R2.40. And how much is that part? Well, let's have a look. Out comes the calculator, and we're going to say R2.40 per minute. How much am I going to pay per second? How many seconds are in a minute? There are 60. So we're going to say 2 Rand 40, divide that now by 60. So we're going to divide it by 60 equals, and we get an answer of 4 cents. So although I am paying 2 Rand 40 a minute, I'm also paying 0.04 Rand per second. Okay? Do you understand that? So if I talk for a whole minute, I'm being charged 2 Rand 40. If I only talk for a few seconds, I'm only going to be charged 4 cents for every second. How's that going to help me? Well, let's have a look at that. Okay, but hold on, that's for peak time, hey? The same applies for off-peak. Now let's have a look. 1 Rand 20 for a full minute. So if I'm paying 1 Rand 20 for the full minute, off-peak, how much am I going to pay off-peak per second? Well, let's look at this. If I take 1 Rand 20, okay, for the minute, I'm going to divide it by 60. Why? Because there's 60 seconds in a minute. And I'm going to land up paying 2 cents a second. So let's do that. I'm going to write it right here. Either I pay 4 cents peak time, off peak, I'm going to pay 1 Rand 20 a minute, or I'm paying 2 cents a second. Let's use that and let's look here. Peak time, 5 minutes. 5 minutes at 2 Rand 40. So with my calculator, I'm going to say I'm paying 5 minutes times 2 Rand 40. And that gives me 12 Rand. But I've got to add something. What am I going to add? I'm going to add the fact that I'm paying, also talking for 48 seconds. So I'm paying 4 cents for 48 seconds. So we're going to say plus 0.04 cents times my 48 seconds. Final answer, I am paying for that call 13 Rand 92. Yeah, this is rough stuff, eh? 13 Rand 92. So let's write it down. So here we go. So that's 13 Rand. And what was it? Let's have a look quickly. 92. Okay, so 13 Rand 92. Let's look at another example. We're going to look at one of the off-peak costs. So let's look here. For 12 minutes, 23 seconds, I'm talking, and it's during off-peak time. We notice from our table that every off-peak minute is 1 Rand 20. So for this one over here of 12 minutes, and this is the one we're doing, 12 minutes, we're going to say, right, I am talking for 12 minutes and it's costing me 1 Rand 20 equals, there's my answer, 14 Rand 40. But that's not the only time I've spoken. I spoke for a full 12 minutes, but also a few seconds. So let's look at the seconds. So I'm going to add to that now 23 seconds. And every second was a further 2 minutes. So we're going to say plus 23 minutes times 2 cents. And my final answer then, folks, 14 Rand 86. So this call over here is costing me 14 Rand 86 cents. It would have cost me a lot more had I made that call or during peak time. All right? Guys, this was rather a tough one, hey? Now, I'm not going to do the whole thing because, like I said, time's marching on and we want to do quite a bit more work. But my final answer would be I would calculate how much the call cost for 2 minutes, 14 seconds, how much the call cost for peak time, and then I would add up all those figures, and that would be my final answer. All right? Well, after all this, I'm totally exhausted, in desperate need of a Coke. My producer said she's just bought me one. So we're going to take a 5-minute break. I'm going to drink a glass of Coke and we'll chat shortly. Cheers.